All right. Hey everybody, I'm Greg Siskind. I am back after being gone for 2 weeks, including 1 week of a very needed vacation. I was biking in Scotland. I haven't posted very much on social media yet. That's probably coming because I have a lot of pictures that are just sitting on my phone waiting. But I had a great time. I am recharged, ready to get back at all this. And it's a Wednesday night, so I'm here to talk about what's going on in immigration law. And as I advertised on LinkedIn and I think on X, um, that I'm really pleased to have my good friend Ruby Powers on this evening. Ruby is no stranger to live streaming; she does it all the time. She has a great podcast. I've been a guest on her podcast. Ruby and I have presented many times on CLE panels. Usually we're talking about like management issues, but tonight I feel like we're free to talk about the immigration stuff without anybody kind of pigeonholing us for a night. Although we'll talk about some management stuff. Um, but anyway, so I'm really happy you're here. Thanks for joining me, Ruby.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. It's always fun to hang out with you. And you're right, we can talk about so many different things, but I feel like we
Ruby's
can
my
talk about
conference buddy.
immigration.
Also, that's
I-
we usually at every big conference we usually find a way to have a meal someplace in there and catch up in our lives and our families and in our practices. So uh, that'll be again soon. I don't know. I guess we'll see each other in September. Maybe is the next time at the ALA Technology Conference
yeah,
in Boston. Anyway, so let's just get started talking about. I have picked some headlines from the news for the last week. I came up with 7. I'm just going to go quickly through them because I want to have some time to talk to Ruby about what I want to talk to Ruby about. Um, so, Ruby, we were just talking about one of the more interesting, at least to from the perspective of, I guess, from the immigration bar. The I'm getting a little message saying that it's having trouble posting this on LinkedIn. I hope people on LinkedIn are able to see this. Um, but the story was about after this big beautiful bill passed, all of a sudden DHS is flush with cash, and they are, and well, I guess it's DOJ really, are in a hiring mode right now to try and recruit lawyers to help support the deportation machine, essentially to be working in immigration court as ICE attorneys. Um, and they were offering bonuses that were, it was a little weird, this whole system setup, but it was like up to potentially up to $50,000 with strings attached. One of which were 10,000 just to as a signing bonus, and then 10,000. They announced this thing on like August 5th, but you had to sign up by August 6th, and you got another 10,000 on there. I guess it's sort of like, the big marketing geniuses over at ICE and DOJ figure that they can, generate some excitement if they offered you $10,000 if you make a decision to dramatically change your life within the next couple hours. On there, you can $10,000. You could get more for that, and then there was like another $10,000 for each anniversary for the next 3 years. So it's grand total of $50,000 to get a government paycheck. And chances are, if you sneeze funny, you're going to get fired anyway from the job at some point, because it seems like unless you completely toe the line, you have no independent thought. At some point, you're going to get into trouble. For some people, I suppose it's a great deal. I would imagine they probably didn't get that great of a response, but who knows? We'll see on there. But the Ruby, I don't know if you know a lot of lawyers that are kind of like rushing to try and get these ICE attorney jobs, but I have a feeling that they're going to have some trouble.
I was at the Federal Bar Association conference in DC, like I think in May, and I was surprised. I mean, I know that.
Your microphone's a little low.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if
Um,
you can do anything about that. Might not be able to, but other than sit closer to the mic.
yeah. Oh, I think it's using my. Is this one okay? Can you hear me now?
I hear you, but we
Uh
don't
huh.
hear you the way we would like to hear you.
Okay, got it. Let's
Hopefully,
try
you're
this.
hearing me. I had complaints about the same thing earlier today,
Oh yeah.
with my mic, but I think I've fixed it.
Is it better now?
Um, yeah. So, what were you saying about the federal bar?
Well, I just noticed that when I was there, there were I got the hint from the conversations from like the attorneys in DC that there's been a lot of people quitting in the federal government, and that's why some of the private bar firms were hiring a lot of former judges and OPA and ICE attorney, just oil attorneys, and so there was that happening. And then even just recently in some calls I've heard that there's been a lot of the ACC or like the attorneys have been quitting. And then and we also know about like the judges being let go. Like I think they're up to 50 or so judges since January of the 700-ish judges for the 4 million court cases. And then there's even another headline from today. That's what got my attention was that DHS is removing the age limits for new hires at the agency for ICE because they're trying to encourage more people to apply. And saying
Like
like
the
they're
upper
giving
age
more.
limit, or are they trying to like get teenagers to take the jobs?
Well, it's questionable when you read that line at first, but I think ICE applicants must be 21 years old and no older than 37 or 40.
Oh, this is for ICE agents, not ICE attorneys.
Yeah, right.
I was
I
gonna
know, but
say there
yeah,
could be yeah, there might be those prodigy attorneys out there who are 21 years old. I was very young when I joined the bar. I was like youngest lawyer in Tennessee when I joined 22, and that's about as young as you can get probably without. So 21 would be like, yeah, if you're 21 years old and you're an attorney and you make your decision that you want to become an ICE attorney, if you've been able to skip like 4 years of law of school, college and high school and law school, then you're not as bright as probably as people might imagine. But 21 years old as an ICE agent, that's strikes me as I know 21-year olds. They're not exactly the most like deep thinking, mature individuals at that age. I mean, I'm very much stereotyping, but that would make me nervous if somebody's 21 years old.
well,
Although, I mean, I guess that we have soldiers that are that age, but it's there's a lot more to, well, I don't know on there. I'm not so excited about 21-year-old soldiers either, honestly. I mean, I think probably we should most, but
so
it strikes me as a little desperate.
So this 50,000 bonus seems to be common because you mentioned it for the attorneys,
Well, this was
but
for the attorneys, the bonus, the
no, I
50,000.
know, but
But
it's
is there a
also
50,000 bonus for ICE agents too?
yeah, yeah,
Oh, so that's
yeah,
where
exactly
the
for
billions of
new
dollars are
recruits.
going to be blown are on these
Yeah,
bonuses.
they're trying to entice new recruits. Exactly, but it's a gradual one, right? Or interesting because
I
the
just think that, well, first of all, we have 4%. We still have, even despite everything that's going on, we have a labor shortage in the U.S. So
yes,
there are not breadlines of unemployed workers that are out there looking for these positions that they have. So they're really getting people to switch from other opportunities to this, and but good luck to you. I mean, I'd like if they're ICE. Honestly, I'd like ICE agents to be high caliber, high quality people who are making, doing their job professionally. That's basically the thing that we all want is we want them. We don't want, I'm not in favor of abolishing ICE, but I would like ICE to be as professional as possible in doing their job. And it just strikes me when they this is not the first time, by the way, with ICE where we've seen a lot of the requirements. I think it was even I think even in the Bush administration, there was criticism that a lot of the background requirements were
Mhm.
being dropped, and that they were just hiring people just cite, the first time they showed up, they basically
Right,
you're
until you're
hired with very little background checking. Um, so it's not the first time we've seen it, and it's also those people are in the agency, and unfortunately, I think that you know once they're in. A lot of them are in for a while. So it's it should be for this kind of position, not just people who got rejected from the police departments or wherever that they were trying to get in, but it should be high caliber people, and the job should be seen as a prestige job that's done professionally, instead of you know basically somebody who wants to just round up people, is not the best. All right, let's move on. The second story I had was the one that sort of plays the theme is played out, but the USCIS policy manual was changed this week to even more ban trans athletes from coming in, which I thought was kind of like already the policy, but apparently it wasn't the policy enough. So now they've added a lot of more explicit language in the USCIS policy manual. Um, I honestly haven't, my sense is there's there's like three people maybe that have actually tried to enter the United States in the last year or two that would be affected by this. So this is all PR on the part of the government. And it's not actually it's a policy in search of a real problem. Um, but that happened. So I felt like, if we're covering things, we should mention that. Um, Stuart Anderson, who I'm sure you know over at the National Foundation of American Policy, he does a lot of good studies on on immigration in the U.S., and he writes a regular column for Forbes magazine. He's been working on a study about the impact of foreign students and the drop, and he published some really interesting research this week, basically saying that out of the normal million, out of the million students that are in the United States from other countries right now, if there was a drop of 150,000, that's the number that he used, which seemed kind of like a realistic drop on there, that the impacts for colleges all over the country are going to be financially devastating to the point where there may be a number of colleges and universities that actually have to close, because they will be bankrupt without foreign students. And the foreign students are sort of like the only way they're hanging on, because those students pay full tuition, and they will not be able to actually pay their bills without foreign students there. Anyways, very interesting, very scary for for not just those those middle tier universities that are have high, but some of the best universities in the country are completely dependent on foreign students, and even a drop of 15 or 20 or 30% would be enough to potentially cause serious problems, basically cause a lot of American students who get scholarships right now that enable them to attend universities, that a lot of American students would probably end up also losing their scholarships, because the money that
Mhm.
supports those scholarships would be gone as well without the foreign students paying full tuition on there. So it was a very interesting report. I figured it was worth mentioning. Go to National Foundation for American Policy if you want to read more about that.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think I mentioned that the student pipeline is so critical. Like usually it's not just the funds for the schools, but usually a lot of them like well, like but they turn into like H-1Bs or
Oh
Js or
yeah, no, I mean we're in a big trouble down the road if we don't, because the Silicon Valley and a lot of the the research institutions around the country depend on recruiting out of the foreign student programs. They also, a lot of departments at a lot of universities, the only reason those departments haven't shut down already is because they have foreign students in those departments supporting them,
mm,
and especially in the science, technology, engineering, and math fields. If you took the foreign students out, a lot of departments would close, even if the universities didn't. So there's potentially a lot of really serious effects. And I
And
don't think
those
that the
cuts from the
media has
shows.
really sort of educated the public yet about the dangers of going after foreign students. So there were some big court wins, and there were three that that came up in the last couple of days that were worth mentioning. One was a judge in Los Angeles banned ICE from arresting and detaining people without reasonable suspicion, um, which is going to make is going to make a big impact on sort of ICE arresting first and asking questions later. And that's we'll see kind of how that plays out. But this judge has laid down this decision already. I'm kind of reminded there was a case that it was reported in the last day or two of a young woman who is a U.S. citizen. She has been, I think, born. She might even be born in the U.S. and she was arrested by ICE and basically put into immigration detention, et cetera, et cetera. And ICE, instead of basically apologizing, they accused her of committing assault on an ICE agent when a raid was happening. And unfortunately for ICE, um, this thing exists. And there's
Someone
every one
recording
of
it.
every one of these ICE raids that are happening now, there's not just like one video of it happening. There's like five different angles of the same thing happening with people that are recording. And it happened to be with this young woman that there were a couple of different videos recording it showing that, in fact, she didn't do anything. She just basically was tackled and thrown in a car by masked ICE agents on there. And that is I feel like that a lot of times when they do when they're doing arrests that are objectionable, they keep coming back and saying they were just defending themselves. They were that they were being
Mhm.
assaulted on there. And fortunately, there's a lot of video footage that can tell the truth of the matter rather than just ICE basically claiming self-defense when they do things that are objectionable.
Was that Andrea Velez? I
I
think
think so.
it was. I think I saw that story, and it was just so shocking because like you could see the video of like I think she was like being dropped off by her mom for work or something. And
Yeah.
if this is the right story, I'm getting them mixed up maybe. But and then they like ICE just went after her like and like I think there's a scene of like the ICE having her like over his shoulder, or his or her shoulder or something like that. It's just and the mom was like, "Wait, what's going on?" I don't know. It was just so chilling.
Yeah, and it's a U.S. citizen on top of that. So people who think, well, it's
Of
like well,
course.
it's not, it's like I'm sad for the immigrants, but no, it's not really my business. I'm a citizen. I don't have to worry about it. It's like, no, you have to worry about it. Um, so that was one case. This judge who banned ICE from making arrests without reasonable suspicion. And I imagine that would have been an example of one. And I think that was in L.A. Another one was a judge in D.C. Um, he barred DHS from using expedited removal to deport people after they're stripped of parole.
Oh,
So we had hundreds of thousands of people that are in these humanitarian parole programs, and when their parole is expiring, DHS is immediately trying to remove them using expedited removal without giving them any due process or anything like that. And that is now illegal to do that, thanks to this judge in D.C., where they're going to have to give people some due process and the ability to challenge their removal in immigration court. And then the third case was in San Francisco, where we had a judge basically save the TPS program for now for Honduras, Nicaragua, and Nepal on there. So we've now seen, even with the Supreme Court, cracking down on preliminary the TP the excuse me the temporary restraining orders. there are still a lot of ways that judges can still um, issue national orders for certain types of issues. But we've seen with TPS now a number of wins in different courts where judges are keeping TPS in place. And the reason why TPS should be hard to get rid of is it's very easy for a president to enact TPS, but basically the responsibility is to show that the conditions have returned to normal in the countries and
Mm,
there's no longer a need for temporary protection. And we all know that, for example, like Haiti is a great example of that, that the situation in Haiti is even more dire than it was when TPS was granted in the first place. And that's the case for a number of other countries that have TPS. So if the administration has not been able to make a credible showing that the conditions are back to normal, that judges that you can challenge the end of TPS, and indeed that's been happening successfully. And then the last thing, Ruby, do you want to
every
mention something?
yeah, like every single time there was news of a TPS ending, like I would just go straight to the State Department country conditions, and they were almost all like
Yeah,
level 4. I was
yeah.
like, "Are you kidding me?" Like
Yeah, so
Afghanistan.
for those who don't know what Ruby's talking about with country conditions, these are these reports about how dangerous it is for Americans to travel to particular countries. And so it's official US policy that these countries are super dangerous to go to. And yet they are telling, basically by ending the protection programs, basically saying, that these countries are perfectly safe to return to. So yeah, not a lot of consistency there. But that's and we know, by the way, the Honduras and Nicaragua were there was the one case in the first Trump administration. They tried to get rid of TPS for those two countries. Um, and I think El Salvador as well. And it was challenged in court, and they lost the administration on that for that reason, that they weren't able to show that the country conditions were back to normal. So they obviously didn't learn anything from that loss in the first administration and just attempting to just go back and do the same thing without actually presenting any evidence that the conditions have returned to normal. It just tells me that they're not the brightest when it comes to strategy in the
Or they
courts.
thought maybe the judges would be more favorable or something like that. I don't know, but who knows?
I don't know, but fortunately, TPS will remain at least for the duration of the case. Now they could win, I suppose, in the case, but the judges basically said as long as this case is going on, this policy doesn't go. The last thing I was going to mention is this bonds for visitors. Um,
Oh,
So if you haven't heard about it in the news, they finalized a rule to allow the State Department, and I actually the story is a little more nuanced than I think the media is reporting on, but basically the um, the State Department now they've always had the ability to require an immigration bond for somebody that was coming over on a visitor status. That's actually been in the books for years and years, but there's never been sort of any guidelines on how it's actually done. And so they issued a proposed regulation of forever ago on there, but now they have a final regulation that says that how it actually works, and it's a $15,000 bond you have to get. And anyway, it's there. I always thought that it was like it's not a bad thing if you can't prove non-immigrant intent, and you really want to you really want to come to the US and take your kids to Disney World or whatever you're going to do, and you have some money um, to do a bond to just kind of like prove it, that you're on there. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. What I'm a little concerned about is it's going to be weaponized essentially to end tourism from countries where they basically will just order them to require everybody to do bonds and say nobody's coming in unless you do a $15,000 bond on there. I don't know how much a $15,000 bond costs to buy. It's probably $1,500, I guess, probably to get a 15,000. I don't know how it's going to work as far as like, I'm not in the bond business and I'm not an expert on that, but uh, I would imagine it's just going to make coming to the U.S. that much more expensive for a lot of people, and they're just going to end up going elsewhere.
Well,
If it's the kind of thing that they're going to use over and over again.
well, we already have seen a decrease in international tourism. People are just not wanting to deal with it. But yeah, I'm seeing an article here about a 5, a 10, and $15,000 bond tier, and they expect to. I think they just enacted it for Malawi and Zambia.
Yeah, so
And that's on
they're just
August
starting with
3rd.
certain countries.
Yeah, and then there's others that are gonna. I guess those are gonna begin on. They announced it just this week, and they're gonna start August 20th. And then they basically figured out which countries have the highest overstay, which they said is Haiti, Laos, Myanmar, and Yemen. But then many of the 12 countries targeted in the travel ban, including Chad and Eritrea, have the highest rate of visa overstay. So it seems like they already were targeting the visa overstay countries with the travel ban. This
Yeah.
is just another way.
Well,
But I
now
see
they
what you're
know.
saying.
Now you know how much it costs to overstay. If you get this bond, you're welcome to over. I mean, I'm not encouraging people to overstay, but it is a yes. That's where they're starting with those countries. You know, honestly, there's so much officer discretion in whether people get visitor visas or not that maybe, I guess we'll see at the end of the day if it means that they are, maybe they'll approve more visas at the end if people have the ability to pay for the bond in order to be able to demonstrate that they are, that they're going to comply with the requirements. But it's it'll be interesting because I think, I've been doing this multiple decades and I've never heard of anybody actually getting a bond before, even though it's been in the Foreign Affairs Manual for my whole career on there. So it's, I've always been sort of like, well, it'd be nice if you have this in there, this authority to do this, which might convince somebody that you're serious about complying with the law. Um, so, the optimist in me says maybe it's not the worst thing in the world, but it seems like it's hard to have a lot of faith that it's going to be implemented in a welcoming way.
Yeah, because I think like if people don't know, like a lot of times when you go apply, the officer might not even review your documents. They're just sort of sizing you up from your marital status, your age, I think what you look like, because there's a lot of officers are trained not to trust documents, and so they might just say you're denied, not even give an explanation of why, and then they're told if you want to apply again, you need to wait like maybe another couple of years. But what you're saying is if they could have the opportunity to pay the bond and if they paid it they could get in, then that gives them that could be beneficial if that's the way it worked, or if they're just going to continue to deny and then make people pay for a bond on top of that too. The few people they approve, who knows.
Yeah, it's all in the implementation. So
Yeah.
we'll have to see. Anyway, those are the news stories that I had on my list this week that just to mention. But Ruby, I wanted to have you on because you're one of my you're one of my favorite Texas lawyers. You also have a practice that is really kind of like in the sort of the middle of this whole national debate on immigration. You do asylum cases, you do removal, you do family cases. So you're probably on a daily basis seeing everything that's in the evening news.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about what 2025 has been like for you and for your clients, and get a little bit of an idea of sort of like how changes that you've made in terms of the way you're approaching the work that you're doing. So let's just get started with let's talk about asylum first on there. So I would imagine, one of the things that you're dealing with are probably a lot of people who have been in parole and TPS programs that are now or may still be in those programs, but are seeking to um, file
Transition.
affirmative applications in order to kind of have a backup if they're out of those programs. And so, has your asylum practice, been basically is it sort of like the same as it's been for a while? Is it up a lot? If it's, how are you basically dealing with sort of this sudden increase in need?
So I'd say it's increased. Like when they did the LIFO last in first out back in like I think it was January 2018, our affirmative asylum interviews like slowed down. Then we created there was a backlog, and then we would still have a slow trickle of filings. But then later on, we couldn't get expedite requests done for asylum interviews. We had to start doing mandamuses to get interviews, and then so getting up to 2025, we're seeing on the affirmative front, they're actually starting to
Affirmative is when
schedule.
you file with USCIS directly versus filing if you're in removal proceedings and asking for asylum in front of a judge. So when we're talking about affirmative asylum, we're talking about filing it on your own with USCIS.
Or maybe with an attorney with USCS, right?
Right.
And so we started seeing, I think in May, in the Houston asylum office, which covers multiple states. I think like even Colorado, in fact, and Oklahoma and a lot of states. That we started getting scheduled for interviews for people who filed in 2006. And who filed in 2006? A lot of Venezuelans filed in 2006. So, to your point, back in February of this year, we were getting a lot of Venezuelans because they were about to lose the 2023 TPS was about to end, I think, in like March or something. And so they were all reaching us and talking to us. Anyway, but then now we've been seeing an uptick in the affirmative asylum. And it's not just like old cases like 2016. We're also seeing people who filed in like, I don't know, March. We're getting an interview in like June or something like that. So they still were doing the LIFO. So we actually we needed to hire another attorney anyway, but we hired an attorney who used to be an asylum officer. And so that's actually been really beneficial because she had done credible fear interviews. And now that's a whole other subtopic I wanted to get to as well, is that there's a lot of asylums being dismissed, and they're being told to schedule a credible fear interview. But anyway, we're seeing a lot of affirmative asylums being scheduled. And since my office is only like 15 minutes from the Houston asylum office, we're getting hired from attorneys around the country to attend because there's so many interviews happening. And then we're also seeing people who filed on their own or maybe with a notario or something like that, or another attorney maybe that's been like 9 years, and then they're wanting to come to us to help them update their application, prep, and attend. So the affirmative has picked up a lot the last few months, and it's very intense because usually if they hire us only like, within the moment of getting their interview, then you only have like less than a month to do everything. So
Hmm.
that's one thing we're seeing. The dismissal is another one. A lot of people who entered in the last couple of years, and they were given like a parole at the border. Um, they're getting started at the end of May. They started giving these letters saying, "You have an expedited removal. Asylum office is dismissing your 589, and if you want a credible fear interview, then you have to go to ICE to ask for it." And so then basically in a moment's notice, the individual does not have asylum pending, um, questionable whether the work authorization is valid anymore. They're accruing unlawful presence, and they're being told they have to go show up to ICE, which is not like the place most people want to go to right now,
Yeah.
to be able to pursue their continued fear, to demonstrate their continued fear. And so we have a couple of cases like that, but I think I got one of the first ones that they got notification like the end of May, and then Ayla came out with a practice advisory just last week, like almost 2 months after the first case I saw. So this is a huge problem and putting a lot of people in fear because they don't. I think unfortunately this might be the next round of people that they're trying to use for their detention their you know apprehension numbers. And then on the removal side, they're just like when judges are let go, whatever the word is, whatever, however they were dismissed or fired. I don't know exactly what technically happened, but then that causes the
Yeah, what's
cases to
happening in
get
all their cases when that happens? Like,
it gets moved around. So like they have to get reassigned. And that's like if you someone we were just like really sit down and think about how is this deportation machine supposed to happen? Like, yeah, they got all this money from the big beautiful bill, but like there's you still need people and there's still processes. And what I've also been hearing is that there's so little judges to do everything. They're detailing the non-detained judges and putting them on the detained docket, and so that means they get pulled off of their normal schedule. And so cases they were trying to get through and clean, the docket up are getting pushed a year or two in the future.
so
And
those judges that are on the detained docket, do they have to like go down to Louisiana and all these other places and actually, or
no,
is it
they
all
can
by
do it
video?
remotely. They've been building it remotely since like the pandemic and everything. And so they're getting people on detail from around. Like I heard El Paso judges are starting to do detained docket. Like I think it's sort of like how they were doing USDS officers, like the field offices that were the quietest, they were letting them cover interviews, even like video or Zoom or whatever, WebEx, or I don't know how they were doing it, for field offices that were busier. And so
Mm,
they're trying to find ways to just redistribute that. But so you've got like they're laying the judges off. They're losing the ice. I mean the ACCs because they're quitting too, or people I guess letting go or something like that. Then you've got the other thing is that all the people they're detaining, they're like we have a lot of detention facilities in Texas because I think that's where they're built, and we also have the Fifth Circuit, which I think is what the administration likes because it's a very tough circuit. Well, they're at capacity, and so like I have detained cases. I have a detained court case that went from a hearing that was supposed to be in July, got moved to August, and now got moved to September. A combination of the judge not being available and being so full with cases, and my client's been detained since November of last year for that
yeah,
case.
and this administration is not interested in bonding them out or making it. I mean, the whole point is to get them in detention.
And that's the other thing, the matter of Q Lee that came out recently, and now almost if you listen to some of the CLEs and the reports by attorneys right now, judges are interpreting the recent case law differently. Some are saying they have no eligibility, they have no ability to give bond, and some are saying yes. And so, but for the most part, if majority of them are saying most people are not bond eligible, then that means they're all going to have to fight their case in detention. And even I was at a detention facility this weekend on a Sunday, and it was so full. Like we were waiting outside in the hot sun because I thought it was a count. Like they do a count like 3 or 4 times a day to make sure nobody leaves. um that's what I thought it was, right? And then I get in and I find out it wasn't that. It was just because there was so much demand to see the detainees, and I hadn't seen that in years. I like ever, I think. I mean, so they were waiting out to go through security because the waiting room was full, because the visitation room was full. And like I just needed to see my client a second to give him some documents to prepare for my hearing. But so they were generous enough to let me squeeze through, but it was just every weekend I've been there, it's been a madhouse. This is where my one of my clients is at, and I'm just it make ultimately what people don't realize is it's hard to represent detained clients because the like even I had to schedule appointments on Saturday and Sunday because there's so many people, attorneys using the Zoom visitation, that there's just not enough time for us to meet them, and we have to book them almost a week and a half in advance, and people aren't eligible for bond. And the other thing is, I mean, a lot of attorneys don't want to do removal work, and a lot of them don't want to do detained work. And if you're not close to a detention facility, like unfortunately, I'm about 30 minutes away from one and 2 hours from another and 4 hours from a couple more. But if you don't want to do, can't do that work, it's not feasible. and then it's a cost benefit situation about supply and demand as well. So
Mm.
there's a there's a lot to that.
Yeah, that's a God bless you that that you're taking those cases because it is a I just said it's not easy, and there's a and I guess that I mean I've heard about people sort of like changing their practices, and and a lot of lawyers aren't doing removal work at all. Um,
Exactly.
so that's a and and honestly, it's kind of hard to make it work at like your business immigration practice and sort of the economics. One's very flat billed and the very certain kind of practice, and then removal work is a very different kind of practice. But it is a very necessary type of work, and obviously and it doesn't get supported through legal aid or anything like that, generally speaking. So the people that need it, most people, I think Austin Kutcher has been doing a lot of interesting research about the percentage of people that
Yes.
actually
Yeah.
have representation, and it's something like only 30% of people in removal proceedings. Even the non-detained, most of them don't have representation, and it's probably even lower for the detained individuals.
I wouldn't be shocked by that at all. I just learned about him maybe a few weeks ago through some of the work I do with mobile pathways, and
Mhm.
I've enjoyed his Substack and his updates, and I use that for my reporting. Um, and that's what makes me also realize, like, how is this going to be sustainable? Like, I know they're building like a 5,000 bed tent in El Paso, but you still, and that's in there's probably, I don't know, there's probably like 5 or 6 immigration attorneys in El Paso, maybe 10 or 15, but anyway, that's not enough. That's not enough, obviously. But that's, there's a lot of people being detained. There, a lot of attorneys are overwhelmed. A lot of them don't do removal because it sort of slowed down during the pandemic, and it's not as sustainable. And then there's, I think some people are like, when you have the consult and you explain the process, then they're just thinking like, well, I can't afford this, or I don't know what the chances of winning, and so they have to just make the assessment. But you're one of the things I've been working with is like ILRC, and just recommending like the National Immigrant Project. I mean, even AILA, but like to do more of these removal trainings for attorneys, because there's a lot of attorneys that don't do that, haven't done removal, and basically I'm constantly training team members in my firm, but and then we have clinics at the law schools, but they're not always doing like removal training. So
Yeah, I'm just putting a comment that came from somebody that's watching, mentioning that clinic is trying to get people trained, and there are a lot of nonprofits out there that are doing great work
yeah,
in this space. And that's a not to plug what I do on with AI, but we're trying to with Visa, and if there's anybody in law school clinics right now that are watching this, our software is made available for free to law schools, to clinics, and to law students and law professors, and anybody who needs it that's doing pro bono work through law school, that the law schools that are doing that kind of work. That's where we're starting with the making our AI software available, and the idea is that it speeds up research, speeds up drafting. Of now we have asylum petitions that are in there and other kinds of things. So um, that's the idea is if we can use tech to potentially expand the capacity of the lawyers that are doing this work, so that they can take on more clients without breaking their practices. Um, that's that's something that at least that could be helpful. Um, Ruby, also, one of the things that we always talk about is that you're a practice management maven, and you're a case management maven on there. And I'm curious about how you've been, whether the tech changes and the process changes that you have been making over
yeah.
the course of 2025 to try and deal with this new, all these new stressors that are in the practice, and trying to basically do, do more without having to necessarily dramatically raise your fees. I mean, you may have to be raising your fees. Most immigration lawyers are doing that just because things are just taking a lot longer to do than they were before. But how are you using your tech tools right now to help in some of the stuff that you're talking about?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And yeah, this I have my book about power up your practice, and that's what you and
Yes,
I
plug your book on there. Oh,
are.
you know what? Also do a banner or whatever on the bottom if you can, to tell people how to find it.
Okay,
I'll help with that.
okay,
I'll
sounds
find,
good.
you
Um,
talk. I'm gonna find the find your book.
well, so one of the things about you and I is like we have immigration, we're law practice management, and there's like the legal tech. So we have that's why we have fun always talking about something that we have in common there. So 2 years ago, I was thinking like I need to change my case management software. I need to figure out a way to leverage the AI that's coming out, and so that was a huge shift after having a case management program for about 14, 15 years. I we switched over. It took almost a year, a little less, but we had a lot of data, and we were sort of like a trailblazer in that space. So that was part of what I'm my answer. The other part is then we were learning and training and then figuring out how that connected with other programs we were using. Because it's like we changed our anchor program. And when Trump won, I mean won November 2024. Um, I was like, we got to go at like triple speed. Like we got to get ready because you and I both practiced during Trump 1.0. And I was just like, we've got to be ready for this because this is we're going to be throwing stuff on Friday nights, big zingers, and we're gonna be having like a death by a thousand cuts of changes. So I we went into overtime getting organized from our intake and our just like trying to improve all of our systems. And we've so then and then January 20th happened. And then there were so many changes and then a lot of more volume. And I think like we're constantly improving all of our systems. But even like our phone call volume has increased and we have receptionists and like virtual assistants, but I mean, I think we need to have, I don't know, AI bots on top of that, probably. Like we have contact forms and chat forms, but like really having it goes back to the old school stuff. Like have systems in place, have accountability. Everyone should be have what they're responsible for, have constant training. And so, it's fun to play with all the new tools and everything, which is what we're doing too. Like we're also with a lot of the like legal tech startups. We're working with them and sort of doing some beta testing. And pretty much at this point, if my team's not using an AI tool of some sort, I get upset because I'm like, why are we doing this the old school way? Like we need to be able to pass on the savings and the efficiency to the clients, and that's also becoming aware of the concept of like justice tech and finding ways to sort of leverage the gap between those who normally wouldn't feel that they could afford an attorney. um, which is why like when I talk about, do you want to be a Walmart, a Target, a Nordstrom? No offense to the stores or anything, like however you want to interpret it. I generally like to be the Target because I want to feel like the Walmart person can come here and the Nordstrom could come here, but like we could help. That's sort of like my, a little bit of my bleeding heart type of like mentality. But it is important to evaluate who you can help and have those boundaries, especially in these times when there's so much change. And on top of that, I don't know how to explain it. People say, oh, you must be so busy, or something like that, and I'm just like, yeah, but everyone's really concerned right now, and the amount of stress that our clients are going through, it permeates to us as the legal in the legal field and profession, and we're trying to do our best to like stay calm, collected, give the right advice, think through the future, knowing what's happened in the past. But we're seeing a lot of things of first impression. Like I'm calling it like a novel concept, like the notice of intent to fine. Um, that I don't think anybody had really seen that. I think I heard that those notice of intent to fines were coming out the first Trump administration, but I don't think that anyone really had to fight them, or really they were really went all the way. But we're seeing that.
These are the fines for the each day you're out of status that they're charging you a penalty for that.
Right. And the maximum is 1.8 million. And it's like a civil penalty for overstaying, like a deportation order. I have
So how's
I have
that working in the courts right now? I mean, like, have any judges? The judge has to actually like bless that, right?
well, we're not
Or is it
actually
just
seeing
DHS is
immigration
just
court.
charging it and like, here's a bill, pay it?
Yeah, it's not being done necessarily through in court. It's being done through, like, the client gets a notice in the mail, certified copy mail, and then says you have to pay this money now. And then we respond saying,
How
no,
do
we
they know
can't.
the person? I mean, how do they know the person's been out of status for X number of days?
They're targeting people with I believe they're targeting people who have prior deportation orders.
Oh, all
That didn't
right. So
that didn't
well,
leave the country.
if they, okay. So they're able to send a bill, but not actually pick the person up.
Well, it's just a matter of it's concern
Yeah.
of, yeah.
Very odd. All right.
Yeah, so
Well,
so that's a novel concept, and then the dismissal when I saw that of a 589, like, no one had seen that before, and then we were having to evaluate. So, like, going back to the case, the process, the law practice management side, like, you need to have those systems in place so that when you have these curveballs, you have the bandwidth and the team to be able to sit back and evaluate. You can't, because you might be, even though we've both been practicing a long time, you more, way more than me, but just like, you still could see something you've never seen before now, like, you know what I mean, like, that's a
oh
new.
yes, every day. Every day is a is a new surprise. Um, how are you keeping your team? I mean, we had this problem in the first Trump administration. It was like, I guess, a little bit. We kind of, I guess, had a little bit more of a heads up this time of what we were going to be dealing with. But it is really tough on your staff. Obviously, it's incredibly tough on your clients, but on this on your team, how are you sort of motivating people to, or helping people work through it and kind of just basically be able to show up for work every day and kind of get what they need done without just completely losing it?
That's a tough question because you I'm glad I have an office manager who helps keep tabs on those types of things, as well as my other senior legal assistant and my senior associate to help keep eyes and ears, because I don't interact with every single person every day. But it's a combination of, most people are allowed to work from home, and there's the hybrid, but that can only do so much, but it can give people, like, a little bit sense of peace, I think, when being able, the comfort of home, or not having to commute and things like that. We have check-ins on our office meetings, and have sort of like fun little questions about, like, getting to know each other and sort of be lighthearted. We really like to celebrate the wins, because we need to, really hold on to those when we do get them. Like, when something happens
Mhm.
and we're like, oh, like, we got a 245I case that the lady's been waiting for, 20 something, 24 years or something. Wow. And
Yeah, I
today we got,
remember 245I, when it came around the first time, 1994. It was,
yeah,
and then it came around a second time in 2001. But most immigration lawyers today don't haven't even
they don't
seen those
see it
cases.
very much. Yeah, exactly. And so, celebrating the wins, and then just being, I think we all need to just lead by example. Like, I took a nice vacation, like you were mentioning at the beginning, you took a vacation. I don't want to admit this, but, like, I came back, I was on my weekly call with my attorney friends locally, and we were checking in. And I was the one who was the optimist. I was all happy and bright-eyed and bushy tail, and they were all, like, drained. And I mean, I love them, but, like, I would tell it to their face too. But I was just like, "What's wrong with me?" It's no, nothing's wrong. I went on vacation. That's why I'm coming back with this fresh perspective. But then the entire week, like, one of my kids was at sleepaway camp, the other one's not they're at home, and so, like, they don't need me driving them to school or anything. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna, like, work, 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 because I have to catch up. my goodness, by that Friday, I was so spent. I was just so exhausted. And I was like, okay, Ruby, this cannot be the case. You cannot do this. You cannot, like, you cannot have such extremes. I was like, I have to be the role model too. So it's like, anyway, we're still working on it. I mean, I have my team, having those self-care days, listening, having boundaries, deciding to get rid of the clients that are just, it's not a good fit, not letting them hire if it's not a good fit, having those boundaries. Like those are, it's just all that normal stuff you're supposed to do. We just have to really do it this time and stay strong to it.
You're not bringing in the puppies. We're laughing. There was I've been at several conferences now for lawyers where that's become like a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm staying at a friend's house while I'm out in San Antonio, and they have a dog, and I'm just like, oh, I love this dog, but I can't tell my family that because I don't want them to think that we're gonna get a dog. But anyway, hopefully they're not
We have a
listening.
dog friendly office
Oh no, I
at our firm, and I do think that that is that for well, there's probably some people that don't like dogs, especially people,
yeah,
but
we
I think it sort of
yeah.
makes the it changes the mood in the office for the better.
We used to have the office manager brought their dog to the office all the time, but we did have one person who really hated dogs, so it was or scared of them. So it was we just had to sort of figure that one out. But um yeah, what one of the things I do is I have a garden, and I'm gonna upgrade it to an orchard. Because I figured out as long as you have like about 6 or 7 fruit trees, you can call it an orchard. So I have one at the office. It's a cute little 1940s bungalow house, and I have like bell peppers and lavender, and then I have lime, where I have cherry, orange, and I have some. Anyway, I actually go pick my limes to go make lemonade sometimes, and that's just like my stress relief. I go water the plants and go play with my plants during like in between consults. So that's or I'll go walk around the neighborhood because there's a lot of streets in the park. So that's what I do. But I think like everyone has to find out their own self-care plan, but we also have to be role models as law firm owners, or managing attorneys, and managing partners and everything to set the right tone. But we're going to have to be very cognizant of this because this is definitely more intense than I think Trump 1.0. And if we
Mm.
don't do our best to give people breaks or have those mental health days and things like that, then we're going to lose valuable people.
Yeah, it is a concern. Although the only good news is that it seemed like it happened in the first Trump administration, where a lot of law students and a lot of lawyers saw their calling in immigration law as a response to what was going on, and I'm hoping that happens again, where a lot of people are sort of like, what's something good in the world that I can do with my law degree? And there's definitely a need for a lot of immigration lawyers. And I encourage law students to, when I was in law school, they didn't even teach immigration law in my law school, and for a lot of us, it kind of had to fall into the practice accidentally. Um, Nobody had, I mean, there were only a handful of immigration clinics around the country at law schools. Now it seems like almost every law school has an immigration clinic on there, and it seems like law schools are doing a much better job of educating students about the practice. But hopefully, we'll see a lot of people, go into that practice, and also a lot of paralegals and people that aspire to get into law practices through being legal assistants and paralegals will realize that they can do a lot of good for a lot of people by moving into the immigration space. So we kind of scared people a little bit as far as the telling about all the stress and everything that we are going through. But at the end of the day, when you sort of like size up your career and whether you really felt like you made a difference in the years that you were doing what you were doing, I think immigration lawyers can hold their heads high, and immigration paralegals and legal assistants can all at least know that with all the stress and everything that they're going through, they do make a big difference in a lot of people's lives. So hopefully all this stress doesn't mean that people are afraid to go into it. Anyway,
I I agree with you, Greg. We need to recruit more people to do this, and we
yeah.
it's
And
very
a lot of
very
people need to hang their own shingles. Ruby and I did. Um, it was
enough.
Greg
Yeah,
Siskind, attorney at law, for a little while at the very beginning of my practice until Lynn Susser joined me about 6 months in on there. But um, I left a big law firm that had a couple hundred lawyers to go and start my little practice. And Ruby, you have been a entrepreneur pretty much your whole career, I think, haven't you, or most of it?
yeah.
And
We are
I there are so many people that are afraid to do it. And Ruby, you've written a book telling people how to do it, which is great. Hold your book up again. It's on Amazon.
I got
If you
you.
take a screenshot or take a picture of that, that's Amazon's actual sort of shortening of the address for your book on there. So that a.co is the Amazon sort of shortcut address on there. 712 pages, Ruby. That's like a big expansion over the last version on it. Oh, it's a new book. It's not supposed to say it's
Yeah,
on there, but yeah, a lot of
it's a
value
new
for
book.
the a lot of bang for your buck on it. But it's really kind of soup to nuts on everything you need to know to run your law practice. And it's actually
And
it's not just immigration law that the book covers. It could be useful for lawyers in a lot of different practices that want to set up their own practice or are in a practice and they just are trying to figure out new ways to make it run better. So I'm really excited that you've written that, and it's hopefully going to get into a lot of people's hands. So
thank
Ruby,
you,
it's
Greg.
an hour into this, and I appreciate your staying. I I'm going to end here so that, and hopefully you're not just going back to work. I have to go back to work for a little bit, but
Me too.
I will be back next week. Ruby, I don't know if you sort of have any plugs or anything that you want to make regarding how people can connect with you, or I know you have a podcast, but any other plugs that you want to put in?
Yeah, thanks. I have the Power Up Your Practice podcast and the same name of the book, and my law firm's Powers Law Group, and just people can connect with me on LinkedIn, Ruby Powers, and yeah, I mean, I love this opportunity, and I know it's always fun talking with you, Greg, and we read a lot, we talk to lots of people, we go to conferences, we see things from different perspectives. I'm sure we could do this for hours. I know I'm gonna have you on my podcast, and if you ever want to have me
Yeah,
come
I'm
back on
excited.
here and talk about something, yeah, let me know.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. That's another live stream from me. We'll be back next week, 7 o'clock Central Time. I don't know whether it's I will be there. I'm not sure who's which other Siskind Susser lawyer will be there, or if we'll have another guest on there. But I want to thank Ruby for joining us, and we'll see you next time.